Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Foreign Correspondent Club of Japan. I'm Joël Legendre from RTL French Broadcasting, and we are very pleased to have today with us the Minister of Justice, Mrs. Midori Matsushima, who is going to talk for about 25 minutes about her new job as a Minister of Justice, and also as one of the 5 women of this second Abe cabinet. I know we talked about it before. She wants to emphasize those issues. She wants to talk about the role of women in politics. Mrs. Matsushima is the member of the parliament, and she represents the region of Sumida River in Tokyo. And she's very proud of it. And we are going to have, as I said to you, issues focusing on her role as a justice minister. She has a long experience as a politician. She was working for the Gaimusho. She worked for the Métis. She went to France and Europe a lot. She traveled a lot for all these international gatherings. And I think it is a very good timing for us to hear what a female politician at the cabinet can tell us about her job. So please, ladies and gentlemen, I would ask you to join me in welcoming Minister of Justice Matsushima-san. She wants the microphone. No, she doesn't want it. She doesn't want it.
はじめまして、松島みどりでございます。今日は多くの方にお集まりいただきまして、こういう機会ありがとうございます。法務大臣、9月3日に拝命いたしました。今日は皆さんに、まずお話によりますと、2時25分か30分ぐらいまで、私、法務大臣、新しい法務大臣として、そしてまた安倍政権が女性を活用しようとしている、その5人の閣僚のうちの1人として、お話をさせていただきたいと思います。
Hello, I've just been introduced. My name is Midori Matsushima. I'm very, very happy to be able to speak in front of so many people today. Thank you for this opportunity. As you know, I have become the Justice Minister as of the beginning of September, and today I've been asked to speak for about 25 or 30 minutes at the beginning, and I'm going to speak first of all about my new post as Justice Minister, and also I'd like to talk about the fact that I am one of the 5 women chosen by Prime Minister Abe to join his cabinet.
私はこの法務大臣を拝命したときに、総理大臣、安倍総理から指示されたのは、日本を世界で最も安全で安心な国に作り上げるように、それを守っていくようにということでありました。
So when I was asked to take on the post of the Justice Minister, I was asked by Prime Minister Abe to do the following, to do my very best to ensure that Japan becomes a nation that is regarded as the safest and in the world, a nation where one can have peace of mind.
私自身は国会議員、これまで11年間務めてきた中で、最も印象に残っている仕事の一つが、犯罪被害者基本法を議員立法で作ったことです。
I have been a Diet member for 11 years, and when I look back on my years as a Diet member, I think the thing that I'm most proud of is that I was able to see the passage of a bill that I was very instrumental in preparing, and this bill eventually led to became the basic law for crime victims.
その中で決めたことは、例えば犯罪の被害に遭った方、およびご家族、ご遺族、そういった方々が刑事裁判に参加することができる。裁判において自分の愛する人が例えば殺されたとしたら、最後はどういうふうに様子だったかということを質問したり、あるいはその被告について自分はどういう刑を希望する、そういうことを被害者があるいはその家族や遺族が言うことができるということが一つありました。
And the reason that this law has such great memories for me is that I'm very, very proud of it because of the passage of this law, something that was not possible before became possible, and that is that the victims of criminal crimes, the victims or their survivors or their families were for the first time able to take part in criminal proceedings, in other words, in a criminal court case. If a victim had actually been the target of a crime, or if the survivors of a victim was able to come to the court, then they were able to directly confront the perpetrator and ask for details about how the person was killed, what were his or her last moments. The victims or survivors were also able to express in the court their wishes as to what kind of a penalty they wish to have placed on the defendant.
もう一つ経済的なことでいうと、被害者の方々やその遺族の方々に対する給付金という国がつまり治安を守れなかった、安全を守れなかったという反省のもとに立つ給付金を引き上げたこと。
Also, from a financial point of view, in regard to the victims or the survivors of the victims, because in a criminal court case, the nation wanted to atone for the fact that it was not able to guarantee the safety and security of the victim, they would give extra monies for the victims or survivors.
そしてまた例えば被害に遭ったお家、刑事事件ですとその血が飛び散っているようなお家に住み続けることはできませんから、公営住宅、都営住宅とか県営住宅に優先的に入れるようにと、これは国土交通省の指示ですけれども、そういうことも勝ち取りました。
There are other ramifications of this kind of financial assistance that is extended by the government to the victims of criminal cases. For example, if a person or a survivor is still living in the house in which a crime occurred, perhaps there might be blood stains on the wall, or the person might feel that there's still blood stains seeping into the walls and can psychologically not stand to live in that house. Well, that person or those people would have priority rights into being able to live in public housing offered by the city or by the prefecture or by the national government.
私は法律は人を幸せにするものでなければいけないし、それだけにそれに携わる者の責任は重大だと考えております。
I believe very, very strongly that laws should exist to ensure that people become happy. I think it is a noble cause, a noble occupation, and I'm very, very proud to be part of it.
この活動の中で私は、作りたい法律を改正したいという一つのテーマがございました。そして、岸くもこの法務大臣になりまして、これを実現の方向へ実現させたいと念願しております。
Actually, when I talk about these matters, it comes to mind that there is one law that I would like to create or try to amend existing laws in order to realize. What I'm saying is that now that I am Justice Minister, I would very much like to see this come into reality.
これは女性に対する犯罪、性犯罪の法律で定める刑が物を奪ったことに対する刑より軽いということに対する怒りと問題意識から発しております。
What I am saying is that one thing that has galled me and made me very, very angry over the years is the fact that when we regard sex crimes, sexual crimes of sexual violence against women, the penalties that the perpetrator incurs is actually less than a perpetrator of a crime in which something has been stolen would incur. In other words, you're more penalized for stealing something rather than for committing some kind of sexual violence against women.
これは日本の刑法でありますが、強姦致死傷、強姦女性に対してそういう行為を働いて、その結果相手が死んでしまったり傷害傷をつけた場合、無期5年以上あるいは無期懲役となっております。一方、強盗、物を奪って死に至らしめたときは死刑または無期判決という無期という非常に重い罪で、強盗で死なせてないけど怪我させた時どうかというと、強盗致傷というのは懲役6年以上または無期懲役、つまり物を取って怪我させた時懲役6年以上なのに、強姦して怪我させた時あるいは強姦して死なせてしまった時に懲役6年以上である、ごめんなさい5年以上である、これは絶対におかしいと思ってまいりました。私が国会議員として法務委員会でいろいろ質問してきた過程では、明治時代からのそういう流れであると。そして少しずつ縮めてきた、もっと物取りの方が重くて はもっともともとは重かった、重罰だった。そして、女性に対する犯罪はもっとこの刑が軽かったとのを少しずつ改めてきたというんですけれども、そこに正義はないと私は思ってまいりました。
What I'm showing in this chart is that, according to the criminal code, if a person were to commit sexual violence, rape, and cause a woman to either die or to be severely injured, the penalties, according to the criminal code, would be incarceration for at least a minimum of 5 years to possibly for life. Compared to this, however, if one were to rob a person, commit theft, and cause a person to die in the process, and then the penalty would be either life imprisonment or death. And if a person were to rob a person, commit theft, and not kill the other person, but cause another person to be injured, then the penalty would be over 6 years of imprisonment. What I'm saying here is that there is a great imbalance here. If you are trying to rob someone and you cause a person to be injured in some way, then the minimum that you would serve is 6 years. Whereas if you were committing sexual violence against a woman and you cause that person to be injured, then the minimum that you would serve would be 5 years. In other words, things are more important than what happens to a woman. And if you actually kill someone during a theft, you might be given the death penalty or life imprisonment. Whereas in the case of sexual violence against women, it could be that you could get off with just a minimum of 5 years, possibly life, but a minimum of 5 years. And I've said this is very unbalanced and unfair, and in the legal committee, subcommittee within the Diet, I have been pointing this out. And the response that I've been receiving is that, well, these laws have been in effect basically since the Meiji era, which is the end of the 19th century. And over time, things have gotten better. In other words, it used to be that the penalty for theft was much, much more severe, and the penalties for committing sexual violence against women was much, much lighter. And at least there's been a better balance than before. But still, my fundamental feeling is that this is completely unacceptable. It does not represent true justice.
先ほど申し上げました、私はその犯罪被害者およびその家族や遺族の立場に立つ法律を作った過程の中で、犯罪の中でもこの性犯罪に関する被害者というのは本人も家族も声を上げにくいという点に気づきました。ですから、日本の国会議員で女性は少ないわけですけれども、この中で私がこのテーマをしっかりと追求していきたいと思うに至った次第です。
As I mentioned previously, I had been very deeply involved in creating a law that would protect the rights of victims or the survivors of the victims of criminal acts. And during this process, as we created this law, I came to realize that of the different criminal activities that were possible, people who were victims of sexual crimes were in a particularly difficult position. In other words, the victims of sexual crimes and their families, survivors, found it very, very difficult to speak openly about the great injustice that had been done to them. Therefore, as one of the very few women in the National Diet, I felt it was my mission. This is a theme that I want to pursue very strongly to protect the rights of women.
法務大臣になったその日に、法務省の事務当局に、この法案の改正に向けて、すぐに早急に、検討を始めるように指示を出しました。
In fact, on the day that I was formally appointed as the Justice Minister, my first task that day was to visit the department, the office within the Justice Ministry that was in charge of these kinds of matters. And I immediately gave instructions to them to start preparing a bill to revise or amend existing laws along these lines.
私の任期はいつまでか分かりませんが、この問題に道筋だけはつけたいと思っております。道筋はきちんとつけたいと思っております。
Of course, I do not know how long I will be able to serve as Justice Minister, but it is my strong desire to see at least a path beaten out for this theme, for this idea, while I am serving as Justice Minister.
私たちもう一つ総理から指示のあった安全で安心な国日本でありますが、一つは日本の、この治安を良くするためには再び犯罪を犯すですね、再犯を防止すること、これが最重要であります。つまり、刑務所に入る人 一昨年平成24年に刑務所に入った人のなんと6割が2度目以降の刑務所入りでした。
Another thing that Prime Minister Abe had instructed me to do was, as I mentioned earlier, he had given me this great theme of trying to ensure that Japan becomes a nation that is regarded as being one of the safest in the world. In order to do this, a very, very high priority issue for us is to prevent criminals from committing crimes again. If we look at the people who were incarcerated, put into penitentiaries in 2012, we found that 60% of them were repeat offenders. They had committed more than 2 crimes in the past.
刑務所から出た人が再び犯罪を犯さないために何が必要か。それは居場所、帰っていくところがあること、そしてと同時に仕事があることです。
What is necessary to ensure that people who come out from the penitentiaries do not become repeat offenders? I think there are 2 things they need. First of all, they need a place to call home. They need a place to live, and they also need work.
ひとたび犯罪を犯したけれども、これから立ち直ろうという人たちにその仕事を提供する、そしてまたそれを紹介したりする、そういった仕事を提供する人をしてくださる方は協力雇用主と呼んでますけど、協力雇用主、助ける雇用主ですね。それともう一つはその仲立ちをする人、保護司という日本では、民間のボランティアの方、全国で4万8,000人いるんですけれども、そのボランティア保護司の方たちに、がそのボランティアで業務を行いやすい環境、そして協力雇用主の方が、取ってやろうということになりやすい環境を作っていくことが法務省の法務大臣の仕事であると思っています。
In order for people to be able to try to build a second life, to try to build a good life once they come out from penitentiaries, as I said, it is important for them to be able to have work. So we want, as a government, to be able to offer work to people who were in jail, and if not actually offer direct work, at least offer them introductions to work that they might pursue. And in other words, we have a system where we have many what we call cooperative employers throughout Japan. These are employers who understand our cause and our needs and are willing to try hiring people who have served time. And then there's also another category of people, and these are private volunteers. We call them hogoshi, which might be translated as protectors. And they act as mediators to try to help people who have come from jails to try to create a new life. We at the Justice Ministry must do our best to create an environment so that these cooperative employers and these protectors will be able to fulfill their jobs.
ところで2020年東京オリンピック・パラリンピック大会が予定されております。
Of course, as you know, in 2020, Tokyo will host the Olympic Games and the Paralympic Games.
そこへ向けて私たち日本は観光立国目指し、昨年は初めて1年間に日本に来てくれる方が1000万人を突破しました。
Of course, in order to do this, we are aiming to create a nation. Japan is a nation that is a tourism-oriented country. That's part of our big campaign. And we're very proud of the fact that last year, for the first time in our history, Japan received more than 10 million visitors from abroad.
今年は前年対比で2割のペースで日本へ来る外国人の数が増えています。
And not only this, for this current year, up to the present point in time, we are seeing a 20% increase in the number of visitors over last year.
私はこれまである時は国土交通副大臣、これは観光を所管しております。この仕事を通じて、そしてまた直近では経済産業副大臣としてこの観光立国、そして日本は人口が減ってますが、そういう外国のお客様を迎えることを、これを経済政策の一つとするということを、こういった仕事に携わってまいりました。
Of course, this idea of creating Japan as a tourism-oriented country is not an idea that is new to me. Previously, I've served as a vice minister for the Ministry of Land, and my area of responsibility was tourism. And I've also served as a vice minister of METI because we consider in Japan tourism to be a very, very important economic activity, which will help compensate for the fact that we're seeing a drop in our population.
今回、法務大臣としては 入国管理をスムーズに行うということがこの観光立国日本を作るために重要な業務であります。
Of course, under the umbrella of this idea of creating Japan as a tourism-oriented country, it is one of my important responsibilities as Justice Minister to oversee immigration policy.
そうした中で、今すでに始めているのはあらかじめ日本人で、あらかじめ本人が了解して指紋を登録した人については出入りの際に何度も外国へ行き来するビジネスマンなどその、自動ゲートでそこをスムーズに行けるようにしております。
We have already begun several processes within the Justice Ministry to ensure that the immigration process becomes as smooth and quick as possible. First of all, one of the things that we have done is to ensure that Japanese persons who voluntarily agree to offer their fingerprints and make the proper applications, in other words, these are people who constantly travel in and out of the country, such as businessmen. Once they make the proper application and go through the proper proceedings, then they can use the automatic gates for the entry and exit procedures.
それを外国のビジネスマンでたびたび日本に来られる方にも同じような制度をとってスムーズに出入りしていただくようにまずしたい。
So this automatic gate concept has already been in use for Japanese persons, but now we are extending the process so that foreign persons, such as businessmen who come in and out of the country often, will also be able to use this automatic gate.
で、顔認証、顔を識別する認証制度、これを今機械をよくしているところですが、研究開発の最終段階に来ておりますが、日本人に適用することによって。入国管理って職員スタッフの数が限られているそれをの活用をうまくできるようにしていきたいと思っています。
We're also working on the last phase of developing face recognition technology system for the immigration process. We're in the last phase of research and development in creating very, very good equipment for face recognition technology. When it is perfected, we will probably first introduce the system for Japanese persons for the initial stage. The reason that we are doing this is that in regard to immigration officials, there is a limited number of them, and we want to be able to use them as wisely and as rationally as possible.
入国管理の職員というのは今2200人おりますが、ここ数年毎年100人ずつ増やしてきました。これを来年度一挙に300人増やせるように今財務省と交渉を始めたところ、つまり予算を要求して獲得しようと頑張っているところです。
We have about 2,200 immigration officials at present. However, over the last few years, we have been increasing their numbers by about 100 people each year. Next year, we want to take an even more dramatic step and increase their numbers by 300. We are now in the initial stages of negotiating with the finance ministry. In other words, we're trying to secure the budget so that we will be able to hire 300 people next year.
そのような政策によって外国からのお客様をスムーズに入っていただく待ち時間を短くすること、こうやって観光立国日本に資する行為をやっていきたいと思っています。
In other words, all of these policies are aimed to reduce the waiting time for foreign visitors who come to Japan when they have to go through immigration. This is our contribution in helping to create Japan as a tourism-oriented country.
一挙に大勢の何千人のお客様が来られる大型クルーズ船などについてもその入管の時間を短くするための工夫を特別にやっていきます。
Also, we do have luxury liners visiting Japan's shores quite often now, and they are huge ships that have several thousand people. We're trying to put in different policies to reduce the waiting time for them to disembark as well.
日本をそうやって外国からのお客様を大きく迎えることができる体制、そしてまた世界で一番安全な日本であることによって外国のお客様、観光客にとっても日本へ行って居心地が良かったなとそう言っていただけるように、そういったことも果たしていきたいと思っております。
So you can see that as Justice Minister, I have many ways in which I can contribute to Japan becoming a tourism-oriented country. We're trying to make it easier for foreign visitors to visit Japan. When they come, we also want to ensure that they will feel quite safe and comfortable when they, in other words, that they will be happy that they came to visit our country.
今Women in Politics っていうメモを渡されました。女性としての政策、女性政策に関してありますですが。
The MC just handed me a note, women in politics, so apparently I'm supposed to talk about that as well.
先ほど申し上げた性犯罪に対する厳罰化というのが一つでございます。
Of course, one of the things that I'm promoting is, as I mentioned earlier, making the penalties more severe for people who commit crimes against women.
と同時に、ストーカー対策、そして DV 家庭内配偶者夫から妻、もちろんその逆もあるかもしれませんが、往々にして多くは夫から妻、あるいは恋人同士の間でそういうパートナーの関係のバイオレンスといったことも日本で残念ながら増えてきております。
Also, things that concern us in regard to crimes against women, stalkers. There's more stalking than ever before in Japan. Also, we see increased cases of domestic violence. Domestic violence means spousal abuse. Generally, it's men against their wives, but sometimes the reverse also happens. Also, it cannot be just simply a married couple, but just simply people who are dating. Again, you have violence in these couples' relationships as well.
DV やストーカーから女性を守るというか、女性が被害に遭っていると感じたときに、これを訴える先、法務省には人権擁護局というのがありまして、その出先、法務省の出先の法務局に訴えて、そうすると法務局のスタッフがじゃあどういうふうに相談しなさい、そういったことをできる。もちろんこれは女性だけのことではなくて児童虐待防止にもつながりますし、いろいろあります。女性についても例えば職場でのセクハラに対する対応なども訴える先としてそういう人権擁護の観点の法務局を所管しておりますし、全国に1万4000人のまた出しちゃいますけれども、全国におよそ1万4000人というこれはボランティアの人権擁護委員、法務大臣が委嘱しております。こういった方たちにもちろん人権は女性のものだけじゃありません。いろんな角度での人権ありますが、それらを守っていく、啓発していく、そういうことをやってもらっている。私はその分野でもしっかりと仕事をしてまいりたいと思います。
So again, domestic violence incidents, stalking incidents are increasing, and many women are the victims of such crimes. When women do feel that they are being stalked or that they are recipients of domestic abuse, then where can they turn to? I would like to point out that we do have this system where we have what we call human rights protecting people. Literal translation, we have about 14,000 volunteers who help people with human rights problems, and they work under the auspices or the jurisdiction of the Justice Minister. They work sort of on our behalf. Of course, these are human rights protection persons, so it is not simply just for women, but for anyone who feels that they are somehow having their human rights violated, whether we're talking about child abuse or anything else.
最後に一言1分だけ自分のプライベートを含めて申し上げたいことがあります。
I would like to spend the last minute talking about some personal thoughts.
私は1980年に経済学部を卒業しました。
In 1980, I graduated from university. I majored in economics.
当時4年生の大学を卒業した女性が、男性と同じ就職をすることは極めて困難でありました。
At the time that I graduated from university, even if a woman graduated from a 4-year university, same credentials as a man, it was almost impossible, extremely difficult to be able to get the same kind of job as a man.
東大経済学部の男性の学生のところ、友人たちのところにはいろんな会社、数多くの会社から誘いの会社案内のパンフレットが3メートルぐらいの高さまで積み上がるほど来ました。
When I looked at some of my colleagues, I graduated from the economic department, economic school of economics at Tokyo University. When I looked at my male colleagues, they were receiving all sorts of invitations from different companies. Companies would send them pamphlets about their organizations. Those pamphlets, when you stack them up, would in some cases reach 3 meters in height.
私たち女子学生のところには一冊も来ませんでした。
Yet, myself and my women friends who were also in the same department, we did not receive a single pamphlet from a company.
安倍政権が女性を活用しよう、企業においても役士官庁においてもいろんなところであらゆる場面で女性の活用を促進していこう、こうやって旗を振っていることは、私は自分の人生を振り返ると夢のような出来事です。
When we see what Prime Minister Abe, his administration is now trying to do, he is trying very much to promote the promotion of women in Japanese society, whether we're talking about promoting them within the bureaucracy or in private companies. What he is doing now, when I look back over my own life, it seems to me that what he's doing is almost a dream I could not have imagined when I was young.
女性が仕事を持つこと、そして続けていくこと、さらに家庭を持ってできれば子どもももちろんご本人の気持ち次第ですが子どもを持って育てていくこと、それを同時に続けられるそんな日本にしたいと心から思っています。
In other words, what I hope from the very bottom of my heart is that Japan will eventually become a nation where women will be able to not only work, but will be able to continue working as long as they wish to do work. And they will also be able to have a family. And if they want, not everybody makes that choice, but if they want to have children, they should be able to, it would be wonderful if they could continue to work and be able to raise a family as well.
私自身は仕事をいろんな、何らかの形で、記者から政治への道ということで変わりましたが仕事を続けることはできました、結婚することも一応結婚はしました。ところが残念なことに、子供を持たないままこの年齢になりました。日本のすべての子どもたち、そして子どもを持ちたいお母さんお父さんのために日本の職場環境を変えていきたいと思っております。
I myself was very fortunate. I have been able to work continuously throughout my career. I've switched careers. I was a journalist at one point, and I entered the world of politics. But fortunately, I have been able to continue working. I was also fortunate enough to be able to get married. Unfortunately, I did not have children. But what I would like very much to do for the remainder of my career is to try to create a work environment in which women and men will be able to keep on working and to also have children as well, if they wish.
ご清聴ありがとうございました。
Thank you for your kind attention.
Thank you, Minister Matsushima. I recognize here the precision of a journalist. As you know, she has been 15 years a journalist in the economical service of the Asahi Shimbun, and therefore has a long experience as a reporter. I would like to thank Takamatsu-san for the interpretation, and just to remind you, during the Q&A session, please do not have your phone ringing. Put it in manual mode. Onegaishimasu. So, Q&A. I see a few hands in front of me, and we are going to start this session. I've seen your hand first, sir. Please, dozo. One question at a time, and not too much commentary. Thank you so much.
フリーのジャーナリストで、当会員の田中隆作と申します。今日はご苦労様です。大臣は、過去に衆議院法務委員会で、このような質問をなされていました。刑務所でイスラム教徒に、豚肉を除いたメニューを出すのは逆差別ではないかと。刑務所でイスラム教徒に豚肉を除いたメニューを出すのは逆差別ではないかとこう言っておられました。そのお考えに今もお変わりはございませんでしょうか。
お答え。
Actually, I'm a freelancer. My name is Tanaka. I'd like to ask about a comment you made in the past when you were a member of the Legal Matters or Legal Affairs subcommittee within the House of Representatives. You mentioned that you thought that when an Islamic person was incarcerated in a Japanese penitentiary, and the idea of serving him food without pork, in other words, deliberately pulling out the pork from his meal, would constitute reverse discrimination. Can you comment on your comment?
結論から言うと変わりました。つまりどういうことかと言いますと、私確かにかつて法務委員会でそのような質問というか宗教名を出したのではなくどこかの国の名前を出したかと思いますが、それは日本の刑事施設に収容されている、多様な人たちの取り扱いについて、日本国民の中でいろんな意見があります。その一つを申しました。その時は。
If I may start with conclusions first, I can say that my feelings have changed on this matter. And if I would explain in more detail, at that time, I did, yes, make a comment, as you mentioned, in the Legal Affairs Committee of the Diet. But the context was that we were talking about the diversity of persons who were incarcerated in Japanese penitentiaries, and in regard to their treatment. At that time in Japan, among the general population, there were many, many different opinions that were being raised about how they should be treated.
その後私もいろいろな、勉強をしてまいりましたし、そしてまた法務大臣としてこの国内外の内外のいろんなご意見のバランス、特に宗教に対する寛容性というのは国際的な人権の中でも非常に重要なものであるということ、そういう認識にも立って食事はもちろんのこと、実際に期日節で行われています各種宗教的な、儀式もその大きな音を立てるとかそういうことがなければ、何を使ってどのようなことをお祈りを捧げてもいいし、いろんな対応していいということを法務省は規定している、それが正しいと思っております。
After this incident, or after that period, I did study a great deal about these matters, and I also realized that the Justice Ministry has a very clear policy about this idea at present, and that is that we need to take in the opinions and ways of thinking of not only people within the domestic population, but also from the international population as well. And as we consider the subject of human rights, religious tolerance, of course, is a very, very important aspect of religious tolerance. And so the Justice Ministry has indicated that in order to provide, to meet the religious needs of the different people who are incarcerated, whether we're talking about the kinds of foods that they eat, we should be cooperative, and also in regard to whatever ceremonies that each group needs to do, as long as they don't make tremendous amounts of noise, for example, and don't inconvenience the other people. If they need specific items to do their religious ceremonies, that should also be allowed. This is what is indicated according to the guidance of the Justice Ministry, and I think that is appropriate.
Thank you. Yes, Richard, come.
Richard Lloyd Parry of the Times. Japan's policy on the death penalty is clear and long-standing. But despite that, regularly European governments put pressure on Japan to abolish capital punishment. Why is it, do you think, that even after all this time, European governments refuse to understand Japan's position? And are you frustrated by that? And the second question, there's recently been a lot of discussion, as you know, about the group known as Zaitokai. Can you tell us your view of that organisation, and are there perhaps positive aspects of the Zaitokai which some people do not appreciate?
すみません、はい、タイムズでございます。その日本はその死刑について非常にはっきりとした明らかな、そして非常に長く持ち続けた政策、ポリシーっていうのが考えを持っているわけでございます。しかしながらそれにもかかわらず、定期的にヨーロッパの各国の政府がその死刑を廃止すべきだというふうに圧力をかけるわけでございます。この件についてでございますが、ヨーロッパの国々はなぜ日本のその立場、日本の考え方を理解してくださらないのか、そういうことについてなんかフラストレーションとか疑問というのは感じたことはありますでしょうか。そしてもう一つ、関連して質問ということなんでしょうか。その在徳会というその組織が今非常に話題になっております。この組織をどう見ていらっしゃいますでしょうか。そして大臣から見て、この組織にそのプラスの面、何か良い面もあると思いますでしょうか。
一つ目の、死刑の問題でございますが、今の質問の方は、日本の立場をご理解いただいているのかと思いますけれども、日本では、世論調査で場合によっては死刑もやむを得ないという回答が 85.6% になっております。だいたい5年おきぐらいに内閣府が世論調査をしておりまして、最新の数字が、やむを得ないというのが 85.6%、 どんな場合でも死刑は廃止すべきだという考えが 5.7%、 わからないが 8.6% となっております。ヨーロッパなり、あるいは各種国際機関から時々この死刑の制度及び執行ぶりについてご批判があることは承知しておりますが、それはまとめ外交的な手段を通じて、そのようには 考えないということを日本政府としてもつまり諸外国の批判は当たらないということを日本として示している次第です。
In regard to Japan's attitude toward the death penalty, I'm assuming that the questioner understands basically Japan's attitude toward or thinking towards the death penalty. What I mean by this is that according to opinion polls, 85.6% of the population say that in some cases the death penalty cannot be avoided or should not be avoided. And these opinion polls are taken about every 5 years. But the people who say in extreme cases we have no choice but to use the death penalty, the people respond to this statement around over 80% each time. In regard to the latest poll, the numbers of people who say they are absolutely against the death penalty regardless of the circumstance, that number is only 5.7% of the population. And people who respond by saying, I don't know about this issue is 8.6%. And yes, I am very aware of the fact that from time to time, nations of Europe, as you've pointed out, and other international organizations, for example, criticize Japan's stance on the death penalty and about the fact that we sometimes do implement the death penalty. Whenever such criticisms arise, we use diplomatic channels to explain Japan's positions and to explain that Japan currently has no intent to change its position on this issue.
もう一点、在特化という団体についてご質問ありましたが、日本の憲法で結社の自由が認められております。そしてそれに該当するとしたら、私がその良い点悪い点というそう判断材料もありませんし、結社の自由があることとそういう会があることを一応知っているという程度に過ぎませんので、何とも言いようがありません。
In regard to your question about the Zaitokukai, I know that, first of all, in the Constitution of Japan, the right of people to assemble is a right that is guaranteed by the Constitution. In regard to your question as to whether it is are there any good points or bad points about this organization, I really have no material or information to be able to make any kind of a judgment. I simply know that there is a right in the Constitution that for people to assemble, and there was that such an organization exists. That is the extent of my knowledge about this organization.
つまりどういう言動をされているか司祭に承知しているわけでないし、どのことについて聞かれているかわからないので評価し得ないということで、何とも言いようがないということです。
In other words, what I'm trying to say is that I do not know in great detail exactly what they espouse or what they say in public. So I do not know what aspect of this organization I can even comment upon. I really do not have enough information to be able to offer any comments.
And as a minister, would you like to have more information about it?
大臣でいらっしゃいますので、この非常に話題になっておりますこの組織でございますので、もっとその細細な情報を入手したいと思われますでしょうか。
細細な情報、かつて京都の私新聞情報を勉強した限りに、京都のある学校、ある民族の学校での周辺の行動について、在特会のメンバーの人がに対する判決が出たことは承知しておりますが、その会の目的とか何か今のところ知らないというか、法務大臣が所管する会でもございませんので分かりません。
So, I mean, in regard to more detailed information, I do, of course, follow the newspapers, and I understand that members of this group were doing things around the vicinity of, a special school for where students of a certain ethnicity came to study, and that a verdict had been issued against these people for doing certain things. But in regard to what exactly this organization stands for, what their goals are, in part because this organization is not under the direct jurisdiction of the Justice Ministry, I do not have more very specific information about the organization.
Okay, with the equal opportunities, I'm going to be scolded by the minister if I don't give the question to a woman. So, Natalie, please come. And we'll have others after that. Yes. Make it short, please.
Thank you for coming. My name is Natalie from Daily Beast. With regard to cybersecurity, according to the NISC, National Information Security Center, only about half of Japanese companies have an IT security policy. So, in other words, it's reported that Japan has a weak IT security. How do you intend to tackle the cyber attacks on Japan? Thank you very much.
デイリービースト、からでございます。そのサイバーセキュリティ、サイバー攻撃について伺いたいと思うのでございます。NISC という、組織があるそうでございますが、国家、情報、安全保障センターでございますでしょうか、の調査によりますと、直訳でございますが、日本の企業の、約半分、しかその IT その、セキュリティポリシーを持ってないということでございます。非常に脆弱である、サイバー攻撃に対して脆弱であるということでございますが、この状況を変えるために何をお考えでございますでしょうか。
サイバー攻撃に対して日本の企業だけなし日本政府の各機関ももっと強固たる方策を取らなければいけないと思っています。ただ今まさにおっしゃったようにその日本のまとめ役は内閣官房でありまして法務省として法務省はその所管でないのでそれについてはどういった法制度を作るということも残念ながらできないとか作る立場にはない。ただおっしゃったように日本の企業も政府もそのサイバー攻撃への備えはもっともっとしっかりするための方策を急いでやらなければダメだと考えています。
In regard to your question about cyber attacks, it is not only Japanese companies that are very vulnerable to these attacks, but also different institutions within the Japanese government also do not have a very, very strong IT security policy. And I feel strongly that we need to strengthen security for all of these organizations, whether they're public or private. But as you have referred to the need for legislation, perhaps this is not something that is exactly under the provenance or the jurisdiction of the Justice Ministry. So in regard to what kind of legislation is necessary, the Justice Ministry is not in a position to actually propose certain specific things. But I do agree with you about the general concept, which is that not only companies but government institutions need to develop a stronger policy.
Yes, the lady over there.
フリーランスの江川と申します。よろしくお願いします。先ほどのお答えの中に在特会は法務省の所管でもないのでというお話がありましたが、人権の問題というのはまさに法務省の所管であります。在特会のデモの中で、韓国人を殺せとかですね、あるいは在日韓国人出ていけというようないわゆるこのヘイトスピーチがたくさんあり、あるいはそのフィリピン人のその在留の問題で非常に法律問題にはなっていたんですが、その中学生の女の子が通っている学校の前で出てけ出てけとやったりですね、いわゆるこの人権問題が多発しております。そういう問題について法務大臣としてですね、どういうふうに取り組んでいくのかということをお聞かせください。
I'm a freelancer, Egawa, and I'd like to ask about one of the comments that you made earlier in response to the question about the Zaitokai. You mentioned that this organization was not under the jurisdiction of the Justice Ministry. However, this organization is very much involved in what we call violation of human rights activities. And human rights activities or human rights concerns are very much under the auspices of the Justice Ministry. For example, they have engaged in hate speeches such as saying that Koreans should be killed or that people, Zainichi Korean residents in Japan should leave the country when there was some trouble, some legal matter involving some Filipinos and they're having extended their legal right to stay in this country. There was a young girl who was attending middle school, and many of these Zaitokai members stood outside the school and yelled at her. In other words, there are many, many examples of human rights violations, which I think falls under your provenance.
今の江川さんの質問についてならばしっかり答える義務もあるし答えることができます。つまりその特定の行動マイノリティと言われる方たち特定の人種や民族に対する民族とか国籍に対すの方たちに対する 憎悪ですとか侮蔑ですとかそういった言動、ヘイトスピーチというものはそういうものだろうと思いますが、これは絶対に許してはならないことであります。そしてただ許してはならないことですが、それについてどういう対応を取るかはいくつか考えられると思っています。一つは今の法律の枠組みの中でも先ほど申し上げました判決のように、民法の不法行為、名誉毀損ですよね、これに該当する場合には、この民法でも損害賠償責任が発生いたしますし、また一定の場合には刑法の名誉毀損罪ですとか侮辱罪、業務妨害罪といったことが当たってまいります。そういった形で、罪となってまいります。で、こういうことが成立しうる。ただこの場合はその特定の個人や団体というものに特定した行動でないとなかなかそういう法体系で、は難しいのかもしれませんが、そういう対応があると。でそしてですね、この民法上の不法行為や刑事罰の対象にならない行為、つまりやや漠然としてて、しかし人の人権を傷つけるといったこういう行為に対してどうするか、これもあってはいけないわけですが、まずは私たち法務省としてはさっき申し上げました人権擁護という観点に立って、人権擁護についてさっきはちょっと女性の問題を挙げました、セクハラだとか家庭内暴力を挙げましたが、このいろんなテーマ、啓発活動を行っています。この啓発活動のテーマの中の重点項目の一つが外国人の人権を尊重しようということであります。
In regard to your question, Ms. Egawa, and the specific examples you gave that is an area which I certainly have the obligation to respond as Justice Minister, and I will very gladly respond as Justice Minister. In other words, when there are specific acts that are taken, for example, if certain ethnic groups or people from a certain possessing a nationality of a certain nation are targeted and insulted in some way, in other words, they are subjected to verbal abuse, I think this is what hate speeches are all about, then that is something that simply cannot be tolerated, absolutely cannot be tolerated. Having said, however, that they cannot be tolerated, what exactly can we do in regard to these kinds of activities? First of all, there are things that we can be doing under the existing laws. If we look at, for example, at the Civil Code, there are things there are actions for which you can demand compensation for example, things like slander. And also, even within the criminal code, there are similar ideas such as slander or, for example, obstruction of one's being able to do one's work. These are things that can be prosecuted under the criminal code as well. However, again, if the target of these activities are a specific group or specific person, then that can be a very clear criminal or civil code violation act that can be pursued. However, there's another category of what we call space speeches or human rights violations, and this is when the actions are more ambiguous or vague. In other words, racial or ethnic insults are expressed, but it's very, very difficult to pinpoint exactly a specific action that one can prosecute prosecute a person for. And how do we deal with such activities? Well, it goes back to what I was saying earlier about the system that we have of these, what we call human rights protection activities, a people network. Part of their work is not only to help people receive the kind of help and support that they need if they are being abused in some way, or if their human rights are violated in some way, but another responsibility that they have is to do enlightenment work. In other words, to teach people about human rights. And when we talk about human rights teaching, one of the most important things that they teach is that prejudice or discriminatory actions or words against foreigners is simply not tolerated.
後でチラシを送り配りしますが、ぜひ皆さんにも知っていただきたい11月15日に大阪で外国人と人権というタイトルでシンポジウムを法務省が実施いたします。これは1年間に3回だけやってるシンポジウムで、あとの2回は被災者の地域のことでございましたから、特別人権の中でもこの 違いを認め共に生きる外国人と人権というのを私ども法務省が重視していることを理解していただけると思います。
I will hand out these pamphlets later if you are interested, but under the auspices of the Justice Ministry, we're going to be having a seminar or a talk or a lecture on November 15th in Osaka. And the title of that is Human Rights and Foreigners. We do these kinds of lectures maybe 3 times a year. This year, the other 2 lectures have been really about the victims of the tsunami and earthquake in the Tohoku region. But when we talk about human rights, we talk in this lecture about the importance of respecting other people's rights, even if they are different and if they share different values.
Yes, over there, quickly. Yep.
Daniel Leusink, het Financiële Dagblad, the Financial Daily from Holland. In your speech at the end, you just mentioned your background in economics. And are you afraid that criticism of the EU on Japan's human rights record, especially regarding capital punishment, will be an obstacle for successfully concluding the economic partnership agreement between the EU and Japan? Because the EU has insisted on linking linking a clause to human rights abuse to the EPA so that it can stop the EPA in the case Japan commits a human rights violation. So what's your view on that?
オランダのその経済史のものでございます。先ほどのご紹介の中で経済学をお出になったということでございますので、ちょっとそれとちょっとリンクしているような質問になります。今人権の話がずっと出ているわけなんでございますが、EU の方で特にその人権の課題について、日本についていろいろ求めているという現状があるわけでございます。同時にEU と日本は今その EPA、経済提携合意でございますでしょうか、を今結ぼうとしているわけでございますが、EU 側といたしましてはその人権の侵害があったらこの EPA は成立しないというようなことも言っているわけでございます。そういうような条項を盛り込もうとしているわけでございますので、この人権問題が実はその経済的なその EPA の締結までにも影響するという恐れはありますでしょうか。
それはEU 側の対応だと思いますので、そしてまた EPA 交渉にあたっては外務省や経済産業省が一生懸命取り組んでおりますので、私の言葉が影響を与えたらいけないので、コメント差し控えたいと思います。ただ人権というのは特に人種に関しての民族に関しての人権違いを分かり合った上で、対応するというのは極めて重要な課題だと思っております。
すみません、あとちょっと通訳を漏らしてしまったのでございますが、その人権の中で特にその死刑の件も入っていると思うんでございますがということだったんですが、
死刑に関しては日本で先ほど申しましたように、世論を考え、そしてまた日本の三審制で裁判 3回こう隔っているんですが、それで、そのような決定が出された場合にはこれはやはり重大に受け止めて、もちろん死刑制度というのが人の命を奪う大変な制度であることは認識しておりますが、凶悪犯罪もある、被害者の感情もある、そして世論もこういう状況であることを受けて日本でこの死刑制度廃止を今取り上げることはふさわしくないと考えます。
Of course, I really cannot respond in detail to your question because I think it will partly depend on what the EU side decides to do. And also, I understand that in regard to the EPA, this is something that is being discussed and negotiated by, for example, METI and other organizations within the government. And I would not want my comments to adversely affect these negotiations, so I would like to stop here. However, I would like to say again that human rights is something that must be very much respected, and the idea of discriminating against a person or group because of their ethnicity or because of their nationality is something that should not be allowed. And in regard to your comment about capital punishment, I would like to just simply repeat what I've said earlier, that this is Japan's having this capital punishment policy is because of the very strong feeling among the Japanese public And that must be something that is taken into consideration. Also, I must also explain that, emphasize that Japan has a system within its courts where everyone is given the possibility to have a court trial at 3 levels. In other words, you're able to make an appeal to a higher court. And if, as a result of this triple court system, triple level system, the final verdict is that the death penalty is issued, I think that decision must be given its proper weight. And I do not mean in any ways to diminish the enormity of what it means to put a person to death, to take a person's life away from that person. Having said this, however, you must sometimes take into consideration the cruelty or the terribleness of a particular crime, the emotional reactions of the victims, and also the emotional reactions of the general public.
Mr. Matsushima agreed to stay for 2 more questions, and I'm going to have to make short decisions. Just you and over there. So please, you first. Just short question, please, if you can.
Siegfried Nidl, freelancer from Germany. There were in the past months 2 people who got a death penalty, and he had to be released because they didn't any crime. So if these people would executed, they would have been executed as innocent people. Is this not a strong argument against the death penalty?
ドイツのフリーのものでございます。過去数ヶ月におきまして2人の死刑囚が実は無罪であるという結果が出まして、釈放されたわけでございます。であるんですので、もし死刑が執行されたということでございましたら、彼たちは冤罪っていうんでしょうか、実際に死刑囚であるべきではなかった人たちが殺されてしまったということになるわけでございます。こういうようなことが時たま起こるからこそ、死刑制度を廃止すべきだという考えがあるわけでございますが、それについてはどう思われますでしょうか。
この直近におきましておっしゃったような死刑確定囚が無罪であるという全部が覆るような事案はないと考えておりますが。
The interpreter translated your question as being that there were several people that were released over the past several months who had been actually proven innocent. But to the best of my understanding, there is no one in the past few months that has been released from the death row, for whom their innocence has been proven.
個別の案件について触れたくないんですが、ひょっとしていわゆる袴田事件をおっしゃっているとしましたら、これは再審請求を認めるということを静岡地裁が決定し、それに対して地検が抗告をしておりますので、これは彼が無罪であることが決定したわけではありません。
I do not want, in my current position, to speak specifically about specific cases. However, I am thinking that perhaps you are referring to what is called the Hakamada case. Mr. Hakamada was recently released. However, his innocence was not yet proven. It has not yet been proven in the courts. What changed was that a Shizuoka court agreed to retry his case, review his case, and in regard to this, the prosecutor's office has also appealed. In other words, they're going to fight it out in the courts. So at this point in time, he has not been proven innocent. I would just like to clarify that.
Yes. It's not same topic, right? Different topic? Okay.
神奈川新聞というところの記者をしています石橋と言います。朝鮮学校の処遇についてちょっとお伺いしたいと思います。先の人種差別撤廃委員会の中でですね、朝鮮学校が外国人学校の中で唯一特別視をされてですね、で高校無償化の対象から除外をされて、で地方自治体の補助金も打ち切られているというふうな状況にあることについて、日本政府に改善を求める勧告がなされました。で先ほど外国人の人権を大事にしたいというふうなお話がありましたけれども、今のその朝鮮学校が置かれている状況というものを 人権侵害だというふうな状況にあるというふうにお考えになられているか。で、あともう一点、勧告を受けてですね、何かアクションを起こすお考えがあるかどうか、その2点をお伺いしたいと思います。
From the Kanagawa newspaper, I'd like to ask about the case involving a Korean school. Recently, this matter came to the attention of a UN committee, the Commission to Eliminate Discrimination. Racial discrimination, and they focused on the fact that this Korean school was treated separately from other ethnic schools in Japan. For example, they were eliminated from the list of high schools that were going to receive free tuition. All other high schools, the students don't have to pay any money to go to high schools. And in regard to this Korean high school, they were eliminated from the list of schools that receive subsidies from local and regional governments. And focusing on these 2 points, this U.S. UN committee recommended to the Japanese government that they improve this situation. You talked about the importance of foreigners being treated the same as Japanese people, that everyone should be treated equally. But when you look at the situation that the Korean school is faced with at present, do you think that this is a human rights violation? This is a human rights case? And secondly, after receiving this recommendation from this UN committee to improve the situation, what are your thoughts about responding to this request?
高校無償化の対象に、外国系の学校のどの学校が入って入らないかということは、これは極めて、というかこれのは所管しているのが文部科学省並びに各自治体であると思います。で、残念ながら私それぞれについて詳しく知りませんので、知らない状況で何とも答えようがないということと、担当外ですので答えようがない。さらに、人権委員会等からごめんなさい、外国の国際機関などからのその指摘というものについて中身を見ておりませんので、回答を差し控えさせていただきます。
In regard to deciding which high schools receive will be tuition free and which will not, these are things that are determined by, the Ministry of Education or otherwise by the local autonomous governments within Japan. I frankly do not have specific information about this matter, and therefore I cannot respond. And in part because it is not my area of responsibility, but also because I do not have enough information. And secondly, in regard to your comment about this instruction by this international organization to do certain things, since I have not read the report, I do not know exactly the contents of what you have just said. I, again, am not in a position to respond.
Okay, we're going to end it soon. I have a little question to ask to the Minister, which was asked by many members. Minister, you know that you have a detention center for 23 days in this country for people who are arrested, and there is a lot of complaints abroad, of course it's from abroad, on this system which seems quite harsh, even cruel, 23 days of detention center. What do you intend to do about it? Will you let it on, or will you do something more different? Thank you.
最後の質問になるかと思うのでございますが、かなり海外から指摘されることなんでございますが、その交流、期間っていうことでございますね。23日っていう、非常に、外国から見れば非常に長い期間、そしてやっぱりこれはずっと交流、させられる人たちにとってはこれは非常に残虐的な、クルールという言葉を使っているのでございますが、その、対応の仕方じゃないかとも言われているわけでございます。この期間23日、ということに関しまして、この長く人を交流するというこの制度、体制について何かこれを変えるというお考えはありますでしょうか。
現在のところそのこれ期間の問題に関しまして、省内その他で議論は起こっておりませんし、今のところはそれの議論を始める予定はございません。
At present, within the ministry, there is no current ongoing debate about changing the period of detention, and there is no, at present, within the Justice Ministry, any intent to begin a debate on this matter or discussion on this matter.
Thank you very much for these frank answers. It was nice to have you. Many questions were being asked, I know, about politics in Japan, about Yasukuni. Are you going to Yasukuni Shrine for the Autumn Festival?
だからいろいろ質問があったと思うのでございますが、靖国神社もそうなんでございますが、先生は靖国に参拝されるご予定はあるんでございますでしょうか。
そのことにもついて申し上げますと、靖国神社へもちろんお参りしたこともあります。しかし、この法務大臣としての職責を全うする間に、政府の一員である間はお参りするつもりはございませんし、これまでもそうなんですが、私にとって靖国神社への参拝というのは、国会議員がみんなでグループで行くというのは私の感覚にそぐわない。行くとしてもそれは自分が一国民、一日本人として、戦没者に霊を慰めたい、敬いたいという気持ちであって、みんなで靖国神社をお参りする会にも入っておりませんし、そういう形の行動は取らない、私の心の中の問題でございます。
In regard to Yasukuni Shrine, in the past I have paid my respects at this shrine, but as Justice Minister, as a member of the government, I believe that while I'm fulfilling my duties as Justice Minister, I will not visit Yasukuni Shrine. I would also like to point out that in regard to praying at Yasukuni Shrine, I know that some Diet members like to go in a group, and there is such a group that exists, but that kind of group behavior for me does not fit my own values or my own thinking. If I go as an individual, as a Japanese citizen, wishing in my heart to thank the people who have given their lives during wartime for us. So it is simply a very personal issue between myself, my heart, and Yasukuni Shrine.
Thank you very much for your answer. Thank you for all for coming, and please join me for thanking Matsushima-san for coming today. That was a very great debate. Thank you very much. And as it's a custom here, and as you're a former journalist, I'm sure you enjoy going around and drink with your colleagues sometimes. So why don't you join us to the press club to have a drink with us one day? And for that, I give you an honorary membership of the press club. So you're going to be a member of the press club for 1 year. So please join us anytime. And again, thank you very much for coming today. Thank you all. Thank you very much.
また名誉会員ということですので、しばしばお招きいただきまして、私どもの法務行政をご理解いただきたいと思っております。
Thank you for making me an honorary member. I would like to be able to speak about the Justice Ministry policies in the future here. Thank you very much.